I'm standing in front of the two most famous paintings in Canada. On my left, the West Wind. On my right, the Jack Pine. Both of these paintings were done in the winter of 1916 and 17 by an artist, a young artist known as Tom Thomson. He was to die later in 1917, far too young. In Canada, he is a household word. Over here, we've perhaps not heard of him. Tom was one of a group of artists working in Canada in the second decade of the 20th century. They were united by a common aim. They wanted to find a visual language with which to express the great Canadian landscape. One might think that painters before had done this, and they had. There were good painters in Canada throughout the 19th century and into the 20th century. But they tended to work in an old-fashioned style. They looked to Constable, they looked to the American Sublime artists, the Hudson River School, or to the Barbizon School in France. Their painting was profoundly traditional. Around 1910, 1911, a number of artists started to think that they could do better, that the great Canadian wilderness, which was seen to be very difficult to paint and didn't fit the sublime, the sense of the picturesque that the 19th century believed in, they began to believe that they could find a way of expressing this wonderful landscape, which they loved. Certain artists started to come together. Most of them were commercial artists working in commercial engraving firms. Tom was one of them. His friends at the time were to go on to form the most famous painting group in Canadian history, the Group of Seven, later in 1920. Between 1914, however, and 1917, Tom Thomson produced an astonishing number of sketches and finished paintings, and then his career ended. He died in mysterious circumstances. He drowned on Canoe Lake in Algonquin Park in 1917 summer. His friends, many of whom were actually away at the war at this time, gathered together after his death and put together the Group of Seven in early 1920. And over the next 13 years, the Group of Seven covered vast areas of Canada, painting landscapes in a new style, very much inspired by Tom Thomson's discoveries. Bright, brash sometimes, vivid brushstrokes, vivid colours. It was a new style. 8 exhibitions, one after the other, were held by the Group of Seven, and gradually they moved from being seen as freakish and ugly painters to becoming almost themselves the art establishment. When Jim MacDonald, one of the founding members, died in 1932, this signalled the end of their joint aim and mission. And in 1933 they disbanded, having completely succeeded in their great aim. The Group of Seven and Tom Thomson taught Canadians how to look at their own landscape, and to this day their vision is very often the one shared by Canadians. It's profoundly important to Canada.